All right, gentlemen, welcome to the Champions Way podcast. I have a long friend going back for many years, Mr. Sean McKeveny. Sean, happy to have you here, man.
Excited.
Yeah, so to kind of give you guys a little bit of a background, so I know Sean and I actually grew up in a very similar neighborhood, same school district, and just recently reconnected. And I got a book here, Yellow Lights, Pause for Progress, which I've dove into, and it's a great book. I highly recommend this thing. It's not what I thought reading into this was just going to be like small stuff of like why you should slow down, but you go way deep into some of this, and we'll get in on it. But to kind of give you guys some context, so Sean, father of three, and you currently live in New Jersey, and you know, this book came from a combination of personal experiences from what you told me, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you draw inspiration from things that are close, but obviously a lot of this, a surprise that a lot of people had was there's a whole story behind the book too. It's not just a business principles type book being thrown at your face. It's more of a narrative that you can follow along.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. And you yourself were, and myself too as well, dedicated, go 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 type person, type A personality, pedal to the metal with nonstop. So I guess I'll open the floor, man. Tell us, a little brief background about yourself, and then let's get into this bad boy a little bit, shall we?
Sounds good. Sam mentioned Sam and I spent a lot of time playing pickup basketball at the neighborhood basketball court. So Sam and I go back a long time, and it's awesome to be here today. So a little bit about myself. Sam mentioned father of three, very busy life. I was very fortunate career wise to have some early success and continue to be in positions to be successful, provide for my family, but first and foremost, help others. Being in a sales role, oftentimes you're immediately, thought of as trying to just get something done. Where my desire to be in a sales role was more to help the person on the other side, try to solve their problem. So, I am in a sales role and I spend time there day to day. But more importantly, I wanted to branch out. I wanted to do things that brought my creative mind back to the forefront. Because oftentimes, when we're in this continuous routine in life, oftentimes we don't just pause.
Mm.
And that's really what drove me to write the book.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and the book itself, because when I like I said, I picked it up and I was like, all right, we'll see what we got, and I was like your first opening chapter, it's like, oh wow, like there's a big shock there, and I'm more for one, like I'll pick up a book and kind of read it for a little bit and then put it down. Even like I've read business books, but this one, man, I was setting aside time every now. I was like, I have to read this. I gotta keep going in on this. So it's definitely good. So yeah, tell me, share a little bit about the inspiration of how this came about, because I know, like I said, you had referenced this is personal or part personal experiences. So if you don't mind, kind of share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So there's definitely personal accolades and experiences incorporated into this story. So you mentioned being type A. I'm 100% type A. When I found myself working crazy hours and oftentimes at sacrificing not only those around me and the relationships of those around me, but also my own health, there were points where I recognized I needed to take a step back. And this happened probably 2 years ago. Made a career shift, and now I'm in a role that I absolutely love.
Hmm.
But it was a personal journey, and when I started writing this, it was after a year where I challenged myself to read 20 books throughout the year.
Mm.
And I did that, and I was like, you know what? Wow. Like, there's a few nuggets that I take from each one. But, how could I find a way to share nuggets with others that in writing it, it was almost a therapeutic experience because I'm like, I'm writing this for myself. But as more and more people started reading it, they were like, hey, that's really good. Or, oh, I wrote that down. And they were things that I was like, oh, I don't remember writing that. So that's been the really cool take back because I, the reason I wrote it was to impact other people's lives.
Yeah,
And I'm starting to see that feedback come back, which is awesome.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, we'll get into some of these, but there was one that I did want to highlight here because you have 15 different. I think lessons is the wrong term. Um, Maybe not even highlights, but like just kind of I think they're more aha moments as you're reading them because you get so caught up into the story and the narrative behind it, and you do a great job with the character development, and it really it pulls you in. Um, but the first one, because the first one is just like the shock and awe right off the bat, and it was like pause and look around, and I was like, it just it sounds so simple, but the way you walked through it, because I think there's you can get something logically, but I think what you do here is you help the reader get it emotionally.
Yeah.
And in my experience, those are two very different ways because people can logically process stuff. Like, for instance, everybody knows they should eat healthy and exercise. But to emotionally make that happen is a whole different ballgame. And again, right off the bat, it was like, oh crap. But yeah, let's jump in on some of these. So there's 15. We're not going to go through all of them. But number 3, show you care by not allowing the others to share only one word responses. It's
This
powerful.
is one where, from a cultural perspective, there's so many instances where you'll start a conversation with someone saying, hey, how's it going? Good. And it stops there. But how often are we asking those sort of questions in a way where we truly care what the response is
Hmm.
and also are thinking what our response will be based upon the reply? Because someone could just as easily say, terrible. Not likely, but you have to think ahead. So, what I think is important about this particular, I call them principles.
Okay.
These are principles of, pausing that are really meaningful. So, if you're interacting with someone and I ask you, Sam, how's your day going?
Good.
No, Sam, what did you do? What did you do today that made it good?
Woke up, played with my daughter for a little bit, brought her to daycare, did some work stuff, and now we're doing this.
Yeah. I mean, but even that level
Yeah.
of extra explanation makes the connection between humans greater.
Yeah.
And I think that's lost between just a simple formality of, hey, how's it going? Yep, okay, great. No, see you later.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than even at the end of a conversation, if you've connected with a person, you're probably able to point back to certain things and say, Sam, this was awesome. I can't wait to connect in person, get our kids together. Without you sharing your experience about what you did for the day, if I just left it at good,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know that, you spent time with your daughter this morning, dropped her off, likely will pick her up right after this. So those are the sort of nuggets that I think are important, and it all ties to the interconnectivity of people.
Yeah. It's such a crucial point because in today's world where it's so Twitter based, right? It's the one word comebacks and everything's very superficial. You hit upon a good point, and that's the humanity aspect of it. And even as and people talk about this, but the more technology advances and the more interconnected we are, the less connected we actually are as humans. And I think even I forget there was a study, um, but I think it's just even among men too. Like the percent of guys that have, I think like 10 or more close friends, the percent like dropped like fivefold from 20 years ago till now. And it's because of a lack of humanity, because people are like, it's such a formality of just a one word, oh, I'm good, and I mean, I think we're all guilty of it. I am.
Yeah.
It just goes through, and I think it is actually a good segue into your next point, which is authenticity and vulnerability. And I think that's something that also lacks too as well. So tell us a little bit about that, because I know that definitely ties into it.
It 100% does, and I was going to kind of tie it in too, so you beat me to it. So, um, vulnerability, it is tough to be vulnerable. Oftentimes, some people might say, no, hey, I don't care. And that's the same world that we live in that's driving that good response. But from a approachability perspective, if I know that someone is going to share more information with me regarding their personal life, regarding who they are, rather than what they've done, what they could do for you, that's that's where I think vulnerability is key. There continues to be a lot of focus on, what can this person do for me, or what has this person done, and less of a focus of who is this individual? What are they capable of doing? What could they achieve? And what, on the other side, as a human, could you help them achieve?
1,000%. It's such a huge thing when you talk about vulnerability. um for you, what are your ways to do vulnerability, to feel vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard for me. I grew up youngest of three boys, and at the end of the day, that puts a shell around you. And as I grew up, I started to realize that there were points where people were intimidated. People would not approach me. People, might have a preconceived notion based on past experience.
Hmm.
So that's another thing that I think is important. It's that all of these principles involve change, and change is hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. And once you reach a point where you're comfortable with yourself, you're comfortable with your faults, you're comfortable with your good, bad, ugly, that's where you can be vulnerable with yourself and those closest to you.
Hmm.
And as you have that, you find those relationships strengthen. And wow, then things get easier. And then you have that time for the next layer of relationships. And that's when you grow to have the same level of confidence just in early interactions with people. And it's tough because, who can you trust?
Hmm.
But when you're comfortable with yourself, I find peace in knowing that I can always trust myself.
That's powerful, man. It's huge. So when to segue on that, so the comfortability piece, it's something a lot of people struggle with, because I think we, especially go back to the Twitter world, we get into such a state of just comparing ourselves, right? And then comparison is always just a battle of significance of who's better, and then you're never able to find actual true comfort. In your experience, like, what do you? What worked for you?
Yeah, comparison breeds contentment. And I think the social media thing, to be honest, I'm not overly active on social media. This podcast is the first podcast that I'm doing. I have a
I'm honored, man.
LinkedIn and that is about it.
Yeah.
But part of it was that I kind of got fed up seeing people's highlight reels without showing that layer of vulnerability. And it ties directly towards the attitude of just go, 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 go. It's where's the next trophy to lift? Where's the next win to get? Where is the next thumbs up that I can get on a certain post or content that I put out? And at the end of the day, when you're searching for those things that are in some ways superficial,
Mhm.
you're never going to have a feeling of wholeness. So for me, I think it was finding ways to look back like five weeks, 5 months, 5 years. And there's some people that say, hey, if it matters, will this matter, a week from now? Okay, cool. You'll handle it in a week. Will it matter, a month from now? Okay, like you'll deal with it in a month. Will it matter a year from now? Probably not. And will it matter 5 years from now? You'll be lucky if you remember. So I think we're very focused on worrying about the future without pausing, taking time to say, 2 years ago, where was I? 2 years ago, in this particular area of my life, am I better or worse? And what's interesting is you're going to have periods where you are worse in a certain area than you were 2 years prior. But as a whole, are you growing towards a better person, a better version of you that you want to be?
Let's get deep. Um, how would one define a better version of themselves, in your opinion? What do you think?
I love it. I love it. I love that question. I think it's completely personal. There is not any one defined category or action that needs to happen for someone to say, check, I'm now a better version of myself. But when I think an individual has come to a point of saying, I'm at peace, I am at peace, that is when I think they have recognized that they are a better version of themselves.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Ready?
Love it.
Let's say this person is participating in um, behaviors that are destructive to themselves and those around you, but they're at peace with it. What could we do then?
So it's a great question.
There's no wrong answer, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I think it all comes back to the interconnectivity of people. Like, are you defining yourself as your entire whole well-being? Or is it the nucleus of people you care about that define who you are? And there are certainly people in this world that are self-centered, egotistical, very focused on it's me. But part of it is, how do you transform your desire as an individual to recognize that the destructive behaviors have adverse impacts to other people. I don't have a fantastic answer.
No, you're
But I
good.
think it's a matter of turning back, thinking about how your actions have an impact to those around you, and thinking about how those around you actually define who you are as a person. And if you aren't focused on their lives as part of your own, then there's challenges ahead.
Yeah. I think goes back to the concept of giving, right? And not taking, right? What and you hit upon it too, because it's a very important thing when we look at today's day and age where there's so much animosity everywhere. At what point can we start just giving to people to just give and expect nothing in return?
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and link to one of the principles. Um, so one of the principles in the book is this number, 0.35%. 0.35%.
How do we get to
If
that?
I told you, Sam, hey, I'm gonna give you 0.35% of something, what would you think?
What are we talking about here first?
Well, I mean, generally, is that a big or small number?
Generally, it's a small number, yeah.
Yeah. So, what's really important and links back to your question of giving with no expectation of return. One of the items that is touched on in the book and links to this 0.35% is the concept of giving 5 minutes of your day, dedicating it to another person, and expecting nothing in
Mm,
return. Um, and the way that this links to the number is 5 minutes represents 0.35% of a 24-hour day. 100 or
that's
1,440 minutes in a day. Um,
that's
we
amazing. I
both
love
we
that.
both had the same high school math teacher, so I don't want to put her on the spot, but I think that math is right. But yeah, I would say it's a principle that we touch on, like 5 minutes a day. Don't expect anything in return, and the impact is profound.
That yeah, dude, it's really is. And that's so cool. Coincidentally, it felt like that. But 0.35%. It's so small. It's so small, but it's so impactful too. Because it's like how I always the saying I have and the people that I coach is don't be so hard on yourself because the rest of the world will do it for you. But because that speaks to everybody's is happy to tear anybody down, but the impact you can have on just doing just 5 minutes. What like let's do examples here. What's your go to that you do for these 5 minutes? What do you like doing for somebody with nothing in return?
I mean, professional go-tos might be connecting two people. One person doesn't have a job, put them in touch
Mm-hmm.
with someone in your network. Some might be scroll through your phone book. You probably have a million numbers there of people that you haven't talked to in forever. I actually do it every day. And some people are like, oh my gosh, you're so great at staying in touch with people. But no, I just built it into my own routine of, hey, I'm going to send a text message out to say, hey, Heidi, how's your son doing in college? And that then becomes something where maybe it's every 6 months, but you maintain that level of connection. Another thing is as simple as, you know, how, give the time to someone close to you, call someone, just listen. You have no idea what another person may be going through. So simply making yourself available for 5 minutes can change a person's entire life.
It's so impactful because it's because I watched a coaching video the other day and it was just talking about just the act of just giving with nothing in return. So it's coincidental we end up on this topic today, but it's so profound. And I think contribution itself feels good because I think at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter who you talk to. You can talk to the most successful business owners, but if they're just chasing the dollar, and I've talked to them before, multimillionaires, I hit my goal, I'm unfulfilled. Why? Because you're not.
Yeah.
We're designed to give to other people, not just take. And when you give, it feels, you just feel lighthearted. It's a win-win across the board.
Yeah, where I went to college in in one of our buildings, here's my favorite quote on the whole campus. There were a bunch of little things, but of those to whom much is given, much is expected. And some of that ties to you're a recipient of other people giving, but you also have to give in return. So purely being a taker, but not returning anything of value or being conscious of the fact that you did receive. And that could be, luck. That could be, a piece of hard work. But oftentimes it's, okay, I've now received. What can I do with this for the greater good?
It adds up. It's impactful, man. It really is. Because then what you end up with afterwards is it's when that becomes a bigger movement. Like I think because one of the things I do, and it's interesting. Like, you're not on social media. A lot of us understand these concepts, but you're talking about sending a text message to somebody, and most people just do it on Facebook, and there's no personal approach to it. Versus what this is, that's what it is. And when you can have a movement like this, where you just even just a small group of people, it builds something that, like, I think back, like, I think the last generation was fortunate to grow without social media and all the internet, right? You still remember, like, growing up and our parents are yelling us to go home when the lights turn on, right, for dinner across like the neighborhood, right? And that was such a profound thing back then, was just connectivity within humans. And it's part of who we are, and it's something we've got away from. Even just 5 minutes a day, 0.35% is all you need, and it changed a life. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we won't get into it on this. There's another piece of data tied to your day that's discussed within the book that also links back to 0.35%. And I'll leave that as a teaser. But essentially, the number of informed decisions that you make as a human versus subconscious decisions, same exact stat there. So this number ended up being a piece to the book where I did some research to understand these concepts that were going into the book. And when I did the math on it, I was like, that's wrong. That's wrong. But it tied out exactly. So I would say that for those that do read it, it's more than just, 5 minutes a day, but it's also then understanding how that same small percentage that makes up your full day is the piece of your informed decisions, which ultimately are going to have the greatest impact on your day, your future. So there's a lot there. We have a lot of other stuff to cover, but that's a good teaser for
Yeah.
the
What
whole concept of that number.
no, like one of the things I talk about and what I found is 70% of waking behavior is habitual behavior, meaning we just do it unconsciously as we
Yeah.
roll through the day. I'm not sure what data you've come across, but a lot of it's it speaks to just the impact of the subconscious mind. And to tie it back to vulnerability, if you're not vulnerable, you're not comfortable with yourself, you're making decisions that are fear based, that are reactionary based, that are, tend to be more selfish towards the selfish end of size. And that's not going to, get you the life you want to live.
No, and it's also not gonna put you in a position of confidence behind the decision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. 1,000%. So let's hit around another one because I think we're kind of steering to this. Understand the difference between advice and counsel. I was interested on this.
Okay. So within the book, there's a story told by one of the characters relating to an attorney that he had met in the past. And the story, a majority of the book is within a hospital environment.
Mm-hmm.
And this word is written up on the board in front of two of the patients. And the nurse there helps them provide this insight regarding what is advice versus counsel. And oftentimes in life, we're continuously asking, hey, can you give me advice on this? When in reality, some of the greatest discovery, even if we're misusing the word advice, we're really looking for counsel. So the big difference that's pointed out in the book, and I'll give some examples. Advice is delivered with I in mind.
Mm.
Counsel is delivered with you in mind. So, Sam, you might say, Sean, what's some advice on what you would do in this situation? Naturally, my first response when it's advice driven is I would
Mm-hmm.
XYZ.
Right.
But I have zero context in most circumstances of all the underlying factors that you're like, hey, that's a good idea. And maybe I'll go through with that action step, but I don't know. So instead, if you were, and this comes down to the person asking the question,
Yes.
it's much harder to say to someone, hey, can you counsel me through this?
You're never going to get that. Yeah.
You're never going to get that from, an average person. Naturally, you can talk to a counselor, which, do it. Like, that's great, like, to have those
Mm.
sort of unbiased opinions that come. But when you, um, are talking to someone and say, can I, can I, so this is asking the question,
Mm-hmm.
can I walk you through what I'm thinking? So naturally, instead of saying, you know, can I get your advice? Where immediately you're going to get a reply. If you say, hey, can I walk you through what I'm thinking? The person on the other side is going to come to that discussion with, what do you think is right? How do you feel
Mm-hmm.
about this? And it takes more time. So that's why it's in a book called Pause for Progress. It's not the easier route at all.
Yeah.
It's much easier to say, hey, Sam, what's the best workout to, build up my biceps as quickly as possible?
Right.
Okay, here, hey, Sam, can I talk to you about, what I have been doing at the gym and what I'm trying to accomplish? That is going to be a longer conversation. you're going to have to flip into the you versus I. Um, but I actually had a client that I work with who's in the legal field. As feedback from the book, she's like, I put this on an index card
Yes.
and have it above my desk. Advice or counsel? Question mark. So that's where you're almost forced to build a stronger relationship with a human when the conversation is going to be longer. You're asking for guidance where they're going to be focused on you. So again, this is not a one-way street either, because the person on the other side could be selfish. They could ultimately not necessarily care and flip the script into saying, hey, let me just tell you what I would do here. So now you're back on the advice route. So it's not easy. It's more of a conversation dynamic and also conversation control, but being mindful of how someone is communicating to you. Someone listening to this podcast, I could sit here and say, do this. I would do this. But it's, what do you believe is right for you? And that ultimately gets the person to a point of self-discovery. It gets them to a point of authenticity, and it all links back. So that was a lot, but hopefully
Dude,
it made
that I
sense.
think is, it's so interesting because there's a nuance to it, right? Because when anytime we're in interpersonal communication nowadays, and everything we've covered already thus far is it's that human element of it. Because you're right, like people ask for advice, and then there's just, I've always felt like there's context to everything. You can't take everything at face value because even with the guys that I coach, it's we've all had our own life experiences. We all have our own perceptions. We all have our own values or belief systems and values, and all of these things shape the decisions that we make. Getting Because I think we've all gotten advice that hasn't felt authentic to us, and then we act on it, and it's like that it's not in line with the character of who you are. And because then I've asked questions of people too before. I was like, do you want my opinion? Do you want my advice, or what are you looking for here? I think how this is phrased, it's a lot better. But it's gold, man. It's gold. I love it.
Yeah.
Because like again, when I got the book, is I thought it was, you know, is this going to be like Kumbaya, take some meditation time? Because there's so much of them out there. It's almost. And then I open up, I go through, and like I said, the first story, I was like, this is not that at all. And there's, I'd almost say, almost like ethos. You could pick a handful of them that you feel most impactful to you. You can just live by them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not something where it's like tying back to what I said. I read a bunch of books and I was like, hey, I expect people to read this, maybe take 2 or 3 nuggets. But when an individual starts living by a certain action or principle, or even in the short time period that they're reading the book, they come to the end of a chapter and it says,
First off, at the end of every chapter, I'm left wanting to read the next chapter. I'll tell you that.
like, you know, never underestimate the joy you can find in time with a stranger. I I don't know that, you know, I would sit there and be like, Huh. You know, who can I find that I can, find joy in a conversation with them? Maybe it's as simple as, the person at the checkout line at, the grocery store,
Yeah.
or the person at the gas station, or your neighbor.
Yeah. I've been
You
doing a
know,
thing where it's all these small, I try and make, if I notice like grocery line checkout, because some of the people they go through, it's just, it's an exhausting job. When I was younger and you deal with the general public, it can always be taxing. I make it a point to try and have that conversation to help them feel better. You know what I mean? And that's the stuff that's what's most important. You know what I mean? Bring your grocery cart to where it needs to be. Don't leave it out. Push them all together for the next guy. You know what I mean? It's all those small things, and it's with what you're referencing too. Is it's a genuine kid curiosity. And I forget what I was watching the other day. They were talking about they NASA was trying to recruit geniuses, and I don't know if this is a true story or if it's just kind of just a symbolic story, but it definitely gets the point across. NASA's trying to recruit geniuses. So they went out, they went to this guy. I forget his name, the real dude. And they took a collection of kids, 5-year olds, and they gave them all these tests. And one of the things was they measured genius was the ability to problem solve in a creative manner and have that curiosity. And we're going to get off on a side tangent here after this, but
I like it.
they then tested these kids as they got older, and they went through the school system. I think it was like by the time they were in 6th grade, that number had dropped to like,
I read the same article, so
okay,
I know what you're talking about.
okay,
Keep
so I'm
going.
not going crazy. And then
No.
by the time they were like graduate college, there was like 2% of them left. And it's what happens is it's we lose that genuine kid curiosity. It's just society just beats it down out of us, and we're in this education system that you study, you do this is right, this is wrong, and that's just not life.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
so
No,
yeah,
I read the same thing, and having three kids, 7 and under, you see the curiosity. Having a newborn, you take steps back and you're like, they're experiencing this for the first time.
yeah,
And that's the type of thing where with my son, who's the oldest, I don't think I had that mindset. I was still in go, 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 go.
mm,
But it's some of that, curiosity is tied to fear of failure.
yeah,
And again, what is success and what is failure? How is that defined by you? How is that defined by society?
hmm,
But some of it is take a chance. Take a chance, shoot your shot. If you miss the shot, oh well.
yeah. It is. It's so hard. There's fear of failure is a huge thing a lot of people have. It's you could tie this in just the repercussions they've had through their life and why they stopped trying. And if you don't have the right mentors, the right teachers in place that foster this, then you end up as the other 98% where it's like people get so scared to use the creative way, the genuine way of just trying to figure out the world, and it stifles a lot of growth in a lot of people. And I think that's where a lot of people end up in a position where they just end up in their own little shell, and they think that's the world they got to live in. And we end up ultimately creating our own rules on how this world needs to be. And then a lot of times those rules are contradictory to what we actually want, but we don't subconsciously understand them or question them because we were told them, and then we just follow them subsequently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's wild, but yeah, it goes back to even just the school system. And I think it's the world we're getting to is this point of realization of like the education system needs to change.
Yeah.
Because
I
like,
mean, what? Yeah, and it's my entire family has been in the education system, so I'm actually on the side of like I'm a strong believer that the more you know, the more powerful you are.
mm,
But I am 100% in agreement that there are many components to what's taught, not taught, and or um, you know what is considered the path to progression. There are so many people, and I'll point to our hometown. Like, it was, you know, if you go to a 4-year school, you were probably in the minority of people coming out of our high school.
Mm.
Most people might have gone to community college, and half of those people felt forced to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of individuals went into, the armed services for various reasons as well. But I'm going to tie it back to the book. Like, there's no step-by-step guide to life.
Yes.
And when we live in a society that's, expecting you did this, now you do this, there doesn't have to be a linear progression of personal development at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the the book, Pause for Prayer, you can stop. And that is truly when the greatest growth can happen. It's when you're at a point of pausing and recognizing that, the defined next step
Mm-hmm.
might not be the step that's appropriate or necessary for you at that moment.
Yeah. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially type A, where it's like, I want an answer yesterday. You know what I mean? And it's interesting too, because even on that note, like, I can't say, like, even when I was running my gym, like, it felt like, even running a business now, is it's like progress, 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 progress. It almost feels like sometimes there's just so much pressure that comes in, and you need that pause. Like, I was taking my dog for a walk today, and he's usually like barks at every dog, but today there's no dogs on the walk, so I was actually able to kind of get some peaceful thoughts, and it was like, it provides clarity. And what it was a pause, right? It was a pause for progress, because I actually started running through things in my mind of, okay, I do this, because otherwise, if I'm just at my desk all day, I'm just like one thing after the next, and then I go pick up my daughter, take care of her, feed her, put her down. By the time I put her down, I cook my dinner. By the time I cook my dinner, it's like 8:00, 8:30, got ready to go to bed. You know what I mean? Like, there's that go, and it's so, and it is difficult for a lot of people to be able to step away from their job, step away from, different parts of their day. You got 3 kids, you're married, you know what it's like to be able to just have to just take a moment to yourself and pause. So
Yeah. I think it's important to find those moments too.
it is. And it's not like, and that's the good thing I like about this book, is it's not, like I said, it's not the cliche, like, pause and think about the world and where your place
Yeah,
is. Like,
go for a walk,
yeah,
run through the fields, sit down.
yeah, it's
There's
not,
raw stories and
yes.
relatable stories throughout.
And I think it's authentic to a human too, to a person that operates on a day to day, because it doesn't have that, flowy stuff that all that stuff is. It's real stuff. It's applicable, that makes you pause and be like, oh shit, this is actually a good point.
Right. Or like, yeah, this is my life.
Yeah.
I can relate to the idea of, the fast-paced life being directly in conflict with peace.
Yes. Yeah. You did an awesome job, dude. Awesome job. We're getting those yellow lights. Pause for progress. It's a good book, man. Thanks for
I appreciate it.
And this was
when I saw some of your stuff, I was like, that was the dude who used to bust up the hill at 5 a.m. on his bike, shirt off, ripped at 16. And I was like, I love seeing what you're doing. Super happy that we reconnected. And I'm hopeful that those who listen, as well as those who, give a read, find some benefit in this, but also don't put too much pressure on yourself. take the pause to listen to this.
Yeah.
Take the pause afterwards. Say, oh, okay, let me digest this. Don't be so hard on yourself more than anything.
Yep. Awesome, man. That's so funny. You remember me. That was up on Leon and Boswell. I ran running for cross country. That's hilarious. Oh, geez. Long time ago. It's so funny. We're almost 20 years from that now.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, man. This was good. We'll have to do it again sometime soon.
All right, awesome, dude. All right, see ya.